The desert roared with heat, the sun burning like a white brand over the jagged ridges of stone. Ethan Colt urged his horse harder, but the animal's sides heaved with every stride. Dust bit his tongue, sweat slicked his palms, and behind him came the thunder of hooves, 3 riders, armed and relentless. He leaned low over the saddle, whispering curses between ragged breaths. The canyon walls narrowed ahead, shadows pooling where the light could not reach. A bullet sparked off the rocks to his left, another sang past his ear. He flinched, muttered, "Always figured I'd die broke and thirsty, but not while looking this damn pretty." His horse stumbled on loose gravel, almost toppling. He yanked the reins and dismounted in one motion, boots slamming against the canyon floor as he bolted toward a jagged cleft in the stone. Gunfire chased him, each shot a violent heartbeat, until he found himself inside a cavern smelling of dust and cool stone. He pressed his back to the wall, chest hammering, revolver drawn. A faint sound behind him, soft, deliberate, not outlaw boots. He spun, barrel raised, and froze. A woman stood in the half-light, bow strung, arrow aimed at his heart. Her dark hair fell in heavy braids, her eyes sharp and still, the copper of her skin gleaming faintly in the gloom. She said nothing, only studied him as if weighing his worth in a single glance. Ethan forced a crooked smile, lowering his gun a fraction. "Don't suppose you've seen 3 ugly fellas chasing a man through here?" No flicker of humor crossed her face. Her arrow did not waver. He tried again, voice softer, "Name's Ethan Colt. I ain't your enemy." The silence stretched like a drawn wire until she finally spoke, each word deliberate. "You trespass. This land is not yours." Her voice carried no malice, only fact, but it cut sharper than a blade. Ethan exhaled, wiping sweat from his brow. "I got no quarrel with you or your people. I'm just trying to stay a few heartbeats ahead of death." A sudden echo of boots outside shattered the moment. The outlaws had found the canyon mouth. She did not lower her bow, but her eyes flicked toward the sound, then back to him. In that instant of choice, Ethan saw her decision form. With swift precision, she pulled him deeper into the cavern, past a narrow slit in the stone hidden by brush. They emerged on a ledge high above the canyon floor. The outlaws thundered past below, scanning the open ground. Ethan crouched low, breath ragged, watching as the woman, he still didn't know her name, moved like shadow against stone, eyes always searching. A sharp whistle carried on the wind. One of the riders turned, suspicion flaring. She motioned for silence, then slipped away into a crevice so narrow Ethan doubted a man could fit. He followed, scraping his shoulders raw on stone. When they emerged again, the riders had lost the trail. Only then did she lower her bow. "Your enemies are careless," she said. "They will return." Ethan holstered his revolver, his grin weary but grateful. "Then I reckon I owe you thanks. Though you saved me without even asking if I was worth savin'." At last, a flicker of something touched her face, not warmth, but the faintest trace of disdain. "You are loud. Foolish. Easy to find." He chuckled despite himself. "Well, that's true enough. What do I call you, besides the woman who kept me from being a corpse?" She hesitated, then answered, "Iona." They moved through winding gullies until night fell. The desert cooled quickly, stars spilling across the black sky. Ethan coaxed a small fire to life, its glow dancing on the canyon walls. He watched Iona across the flames, her expression guarded as she sharpened an arrowhead. Silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of wood and the cry of a distant coyote. Finally, Ethan spoke, voice stripped of bravado. "Lost my brother not long ago. South border raid. He was younger, steadier than me. I should have been there." He pulled a small silver locket from his pocket, thumb tracing its worn edge. Iona's eyes flicked to the trinket, then away. Her voice, when it came, was quiet. "Soldiers came to my village. Burned it. My family was gone before I could fight. I was left with ashes." Her hand gripped the arrowhead until her knuckles whitened. Ethan swallowed hard, the fire's light deepening the shadows on his face. For a long moment, neither spoke, but the silence carried more weight than words. When she finally looked at him, there was no softness, only resolve. The desert swallows the soft-hearted. If you wish to live, you must learn. Ethan met her gaze, nodding once. "Then I'll learn." Before either could say more, a sound ripped the night apart, gunfire, closer than before. Echoes of shouts and the clatter of hooves filled the canyon. Dust swirled as torches flickered in the dark. The outlaws had returned, more of them this time, their voices carrying the hunger of men who would not stop until blood was spilled. Ethan scrambled to his feet, revolver already in hand, his jaw tightening. Iona rose too, bow drawn, face hard with battle readiness. The fire snapped and spat as shadows grew taller around them. Ethan glanced at her, heart pounding. Guess we either die together, or start trusting fast. Iona's eyes did not leave the darkness where figures approached, but her nod was steady. The night pressed close, filled with the scent of dust and gunpowder, and the two stood shoulder to shoulder, outnumbered yet unbroken. The firelight caught on steel and flint, on sweat and breath, and in that moment the desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the clash to come. Gunfire cracked against the canyon walls, each shot a vicious echo swallowed by stone. Ethan and Iona moved in unison, ducking low, returning fire, their bodies tense with the rhythm of survival. Sparks leapt where bullets struck rock, the night filling with smoke and the acrid tang of burned powder. Ethan's revolver barked, forcing the riders to scatter. Iona's arrows flew silent and precise, each finding its mark with deadly calm. The outlaws circled like wolves, confident in their numbers, yet slowed by the desert's maze of ridges and shadows. When the last torch guttered out, Iona tugged Ethan into a narrow cut in the rock, their breaths ragged but controlled. They moved quickly, climbing jagged ridges, their limbs burning with effort. Behind them, curses rang out as the outlaws tried to track their trail. The desert was Iona's ally, she knew its secrets, where sand concealed stone, where echoes betrayed distance. Ethan followed without question, his trust in her now as strong as the hand on his revolver. When they paused, he leaned against a rock, chest heaving. "You ever get tired of saving me?" he asked, a strained grin on his face. Her eyes flicked to him, unreadable in the moonlight. "Often." The ghost of a smile touched her lips, there and gone. By dawn, they had left the canyon. The horizon stretched vast and merciless, sand shimmering beneath a pale sky. A ruined outpost loomed ahead, a scatter of wooden beams and a well half-choked with dust. Ethan insisted on checking it for supplies. Iona watched with wary eyes, her bow never lowered. Inside the hollow shell of a saloon, the air hung heavy with old smoke and stale memories. Bottles lined the shelves, most broken, but a barrel of water sat in the corner. Ethan lifted the lid, sniffed, and allowed himself a sigh of relief. He filled a flask, handed it to Iona first without a word. She took it, studying him for a moment longer than before. Their brief peace shattered when footsteps creaked on warped boards. A man stepped from the shadows, lean and scarred, his smile thin as a blade. Iona's face hardened instantly, every muscle taut. Ethan noticed the tremor in her hand, the rare crack in her composure. "You know him," he said under his breath. Her reply was a whisper edged with iron. "He betrayed my people." The scarred man raised his hands in mock greeting. Didn't expect to see the little hawk still breathing. He called toward the door, and voices answered. Outlaws poured in, rifles gleaming. The trap had been laid before they arrived. The fight was sudden and brutal. Ethan overturned a table for cover, bullets chewing through splintered wood. Iona loosed arrows with fierce precision, her breath steady even as the room filled with smoke and screaming. The traitor lunged toward her, knife drawn, but Ethan's shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him back. Flames licked up the bar as lantern oil spilled, the heat driving them into the open. Outside, dust and chaos swallowed everything. Ethan stumbled, a graze burning across his arm, but he pressed forward, dragging Iona toward the ridge beyond the outpost. They ran until their legs threatened to buckle, the desert stretching endless and indifferent. The outlaws gave chase, relentless, their numbers pressing closer with every mile. Iona led Ethan to a place of stone and silence, an abandoned Apache village, its walls crumbling but still standing proud against the wind. She paused, eyes dark with memory, then lifted her bow again. Ethan loaded his revolver, his jaw clenched. "We make our stand here." She did not answer, but the look in her eyes was enough. The battle that followed was a storm of grit and fury. Outlaws poured through the ruined streets, boots pounding on sacred ground. Iona fought with the strength of her ancestors, each arrow carrying the weight of her loss. Ethan's revolver sang until it clicked empty, and then he swung it like a hammer, refusing to yield. The traitor emerged through the smoke, wounded but alive, his sneer unbroken. He spat cruel words at Iona, mocking her people's fall. She met him with silence, then drove an arrow through his chest, her breath steady as stone. Ethan faced the outlaw leader, a brute of a man with eyes full of malice. Their guns flared in unison, but Ethan's shot struck true, and the leader fell into the dust. When the last echoes faded, only the wind remained. The ruins were littered with bodies, torches guttering out one by one. Ethan leaned heavily against a wall, blood on his sleeve, chest heaving. Iona stood in the center of the village, bow lowered, eyes closed as if listening for voices long gone. The dawn crept over the horizon, painting the desert gold. Ethan walked to her side, weary but steady. "You avenged them," he said quietly. She shook her head. "I honored them." For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan reached into his pocket, holding the locket as the first rays of light touched it. "Guess I found something I wasn't looking for out here. Not gold. Not vengeance. Just a reason." His voice faltered, but he met her gaze with honesty. She studied him, then placed her hand briefly on his arm, a gesture small yet filled with meaning. They parted at the edge of the ruins, her path leading deeper into the desert, his toward the horizon beyond. The silence between them carried respect, loss, and something more that words could not bind. As Ethan mounted his horse, he looked back once, seeing her figure etched against the rising sun. The narrator's voice lingered, steady and reflective, as though speaking to the one who had followed their journey. In the dust and blood of the desert, two souls found what they had lost, not only survival, but the will to ride onward. Some journeys do not end in riches, but in remembrance. And as the wind carried the last of the gun smoke into the sky, the story closed with a call to the listener. If this tale struck a chord, do not ride on in silence. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, so the fire of stories such as this may never fade.